Well, now we move to the Kharkiv and Kupyansk direction of the front. Russian world continues to destroy, kill, and maim here as well. In the Kharkiv direction, the defense forces repelled 2 assaults by the occupiers in the Volkansk area and towards Kamenka. The Russians attacked the fortifications of Ukrainian defenders 4 times, also in the Kupyansk direction, in the areas of the settlements of Zagrizovo and Novaya Kruglyakhovka. One clash is still ongoing. And in Kharkiv itself, it's a real horror. A Russian drone Molnya flew into a high-rise building, hitting an apartment on the 8th floor. It is already known that 5 people were injured. A 10-year-old boy and a 65-year-old woman were taken to the hospital with shrapnel wounds. Medical assistance was provided on the spot to 3 more people. And at night, Kharkiv experienced a massive drone attack. In just one district, more than a dozen hits were recorded. 8 people were injured, 3 of them children. More about the terrible consequences will be told and shown by TSN journalist Huliapole.
The enemy attacked the Kolodnogorsky district of the city. Explosions were heard one after another. According to the prosecutor's office, there were between 13 and 15 of them. Around the impact site, there are debris and shattered glass. People managed to hide, but their homes did not survive. We are talking about at least 24 private houses. But the inspection of the premises is still ongoing, so the number may increase. 8 people experienced an acute stress reaction. Among them is an entire family, a couple, a 16-year-old girl, and a 7-year-old boy. According to the prosecutor's office, a 9-month-old baby was also affected.
It started there. The first explosion started there, and then they came one after another. Everyone was in shock. I saw the first 2. It was terrifying. One was 10 meters from my house, and the neighbors called immediately at night. I had just arrived and everything blew up. That's all I saw. As a result of the strike, 2 civilian enterprises caught fire. The fire covered an area of 1,500 square meters. The prosecutor's office clarifies the enterprises produced household goods, sleds, and polypropylene. Also, in this building, other enterprises stored materials, which now are just charred remnants. The very little thing in this building, we had a warehouse for construction materials. Well, you see what happened to our warehouse. Almost everything burned down. There are some remnants, but it's very little. The equipment in the part where the fire was very large. There was equipment there. It's a pity. Well, it's war.
Since early morning, utility workers have already started closing broken windows and cleaning the area. Law enforcement officers are also working here, inspecting the streets for evidence of the latest Russian crimes.
For the strike, the enemy used the Geran 2 UAV. Parts of this UAV were found at the site of one of the attacks. Criminal cases have been opened regarding these war crimes.
They shelled. The Russians also shelled the Kharkiv region using aerial bombs and drones. There are destroyed houses in 6 settlements of the region.
Now let's analyze the operational situation on the Lyman and Siversk directions of the front. Let's be honest, this is another sacred goal for Putin and his entourage, and accordingly, the situation here is extremely tense. In the Lyman direction, Russian troops attacked the positions of Ukrainian defenders 18 times near the settlements of Nadia, Torske, Novoyehorivka, Kolodyazi, Yampilivka, and Dibrova over the course of the day. In the area of Novolyubivka, the fighting is still ongoing. In the Siversk direction, the defense forces repelled 5 assault actions by the occupying troops in the areas of Bilohorivka and Verkhnyokamyanske. About 12 countries are already expressing their readiness to join the formation of a military contingent for Ukraine as part of the deployment of deterrence guarantee forces after the end of the war. For example, France proposes to deploy peacekeeping forces along the Dnipro River in central Ukraine. This is reported by the Western press. So, what could an international peacekeeping mission look like, and more importantly, can it even exist? Was investigated by TSN journalist Alina Lesova. Let's watch her analytical report.
The most likely scenarios for deploying peacekeepers in Ukraine are a UN-sanctioned contingent, a European Union peacekeeping mission, or military contingents from individual countries. However, for any option to be implemented, first and foremost, a peace agreement or at least a truce must be reached between the warring parties, experts emphasize. But even under such circumstances, the prospect of a UN-led mission is very uncertain.
Currently, politics is changing almost daily, but as of now, a mandate for direct combat operations is not being discussed, nor is the deployment along the front line being discussed. There are various options being discussed in large cities, critical infrastructure elements and ports. It might involve certain facilities, but even with military facilities, there are very complex issues.
Moreover, a peacekeeping mission under the UN flag essentially means deploying a mission with the aggressor's permission. Since Russia is one of the permanent members of the UN Security Council and can block deployment options for peacekeepers in Ukraine that are unacceptable to Moscow.
It is obvious that Putin dreams of destroying Ukraine as a state. And this means that his attempts to introduce peacekeeping forces into Ukraine are not entirely in Vladimir Putin's interest. The only argument he understands is the argument of force. We need resources, weapons, ammunition for these weapons, technical equipment and gear, everything that determines the combat power of the Ukrainian army. If we have access to this, and if Putin suffers significantly greater losses on the battlefield, he might be willing to compromise.
In turn, the European forces discussed at the summit between Macron and other European leaders are difficult to call peacekeeping or a peace-supporting contingent. Experts explain, as it involves potential assistance to Ukraine with security. Specifically, the British talked about closing the sky, and this function is not considered a peace-supporting function from the UN's perspective. The latter can guarantee the observance of a ceasefire exclusively on land, as the UN simply does not have the means to ensure the observance of a ceasefire in the air and at sea.
What we are actually talking about and what we want is the presence of our partners. They can be present physically with their troops, they can be present with their equipment. They can be present through training, logistics, intelligence.
Experts generally refrain from making predictions about the possible size of the contingent. However, they say that broad, geographical representation could benefit the Ukrainians.
We see that it involves the French. There is also talk now about whether and in what format the Germans will join. Of course, it could be the Scandinavians, as well as the Spaniards and the Portuguese. And let's not forget about Turkey, as Turkey has a powerful army, roughly similar in composition and size to ours in peacetime. Now, of course, we are larger and stronger, but the Turks could do a lot, as they have combat experience. And combat experience is worth a lot right now.
Analysts unanimously agree that there will definitely not be a mission format involving the US or under NATO leadership. At least not without the capitulation of Moscow. With other interstate bilateral agreements, things are also very complicated.
And now it's time to move to the Novopavlovka and Gulyaipol front direction. The bloody frenzy of the enemy's army continues here as well. In the Novopavlovka direction, the Russians launched 10 attacks on Ukrainian troop positions. The enemy also attempted to advance towards the settlements of Konstantinopol, Razliv, Dnipro-Enerhaya, Veseloye, and in the Berlatskoye area. 3 skirmishes are still ongoing. In the Huliapole direction, in the area of the settlements of Privolne and Novoselka, the defense forces successfully repelled 5 enemy attacks. Every day, dozens of drones and aerial bombs fly towards this city. You won't see a single intact high-rise building here anymore. People don't walk the streets here, they dash across them to avoid death. This is all about the city of Huliapole in the Zaporizhzhia region, which has become a frontline city. How the local residents are trying to care for their ravaged city will be reported by TSN correspondent Kira Ovis.
On the way to Huliapole, our film crew is greeted by storks. They are returning to their homes in the shattered frontline villages. Even in Huliapole itself, the nests have already been occupied by birds. Battered and exhausted, but the city is alive. Next to the shattered apartment buildings, early spring flowers are blooming. The streets are damaged, but they are clean. The Russians launch everything they have in their arsenal at Huliapole. But mostly, it's aerial bombs and drones. The downed metal of drones is found all over the city. Are you going to have a museum here? Will you?
In the city of Huliapole, we will make a museum of the shells that landed here. The city was heavily bombarded with KBs for a month. Well, for example, from 4 to 7 KBs a day.
Before the full-scale war, more than 12,000 people lived in Huliapole. The fields, hills, and landscapes around are still mesmerizing. Now, about 1,000 residents remain here, but more and more cannot endure and are asking to be evacuated.
We evacuated yesterday. We evacuated yesterday a girl who lived here in Huliapole. When the airstrikes began, people realized that everything was being shattered to pieces and they needed to leave somewhere. And the pensioners, grandmothers and grandfathers, they began to leave the city of Huliapole en masse.
Those who remain gather here almost every day in the underground points of resilience to get the latest news, socialize, and have a hot meal. 75-year-old Anatoly is a frequent visitor here.
I come here, it suits me. For lunch, I ate and took some cookies. I ate, having taken a cookie.
Besides the kitchen, there are washing machines and dryers here. However, at the moment, there are not many people as they are afraid to come after a recent strike nearby. When the occupiers dropped 2 bombs on one location.
One local woman was injured. We brought her in, provided her with first aid and sent her to Zaporizhia. There are fewer people after the strikes near the point. My car was damaged here. Oh look, insert the key, see the ignition light up. I turned the starter, it started, I got in the car and ran.
Now without wheels, the man in a leisurely manner arrives at the specific point on foot to show how he has arranged his life at home. He invites us to his place.
This is my yard.
He repaired the fence and windows 3 times after the strikes. There is no heating, so he warms himself however he can. It's currently 10 degrees in the house.
This is where I sleep. I'm revealing a secret. I'll let you in on a secret. I heat water in a bottle, pour it, and lie down.
Most of his acquaintances have left, but he stays. He says that when this war ends, he wants to wait for it not abroad, but at home. For now, people like him survive in the shattered Huliapole with the help of police, emergency workers, and volunteers who still bring humanitarian aid here under fire.